is true that many small businesses have adopted new technology. However, there are still those who could benefit from utilizing digital tools to increase their productivity and profitability. To discuss this, we had a chat with KJ Burke, Principal Technology Strategist Hybrid Cloud at CDW Canada. KJ is an IT leader and change agent for over 20 years, driven by solving problems for organizations by educating, innovating processes, and investing in new technologies. In this podcast, KJ discussed the role of technology evolving in the coming years, the best way to get started with using digital technologies, the best way to manage IT security for a small business, and the most important aspects of technology that you focus on when expanding your company.
Hi KJ, on behalf of Canadian SME, I'd like to welcome you to our small business podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good. I'm very pleased to have you with us for the second time now. Now, KJ, I know we've talked about hybrid workplaces before in our previous episode, but today we will talk about how technology has been changing rapidly, and we know that it has been rapidly changing for many years now, and it is only expected to get more advanced in the future. KJ, how do you see the role of technology evolving in the coming years? And though many small businesses have adopted new technology, a majority of them have not yet realized the potential that digital technologies have to enhance their business possibilities. And just to add to that first part of the question, what would you say is the best way to get started with using digital technologies to enhance SMEs' business possibilities?
I think there's multiple layers to that question. It's a good question. So I guess the first thing from a small business perspective is I do think digitization and delivering value in a digital way creates a bit of a level playing field for smaller organizations. I think it's challenging if you were to rewind a little bit to have very, very complex operations, things like natural language processing and translation, or things like artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms. And so now that you have access to a lot of these very, very specialized tools via public cloud services, it kind of creates a little bit of a level playing field. You don't have to have the size and scope of a large enterprise to maybe take advantage of those. Another thing that I was just thinking about before this call is when I put myself in the, really in the seats of a small or medium-sized organization, the rise of acceptance with video conferencing, I think, is really going to drive a lot of value for small and medium businesses, because you don't necessarily have to have people, in market that are in the room having the conversation with the customer. It's a bit more of a level playing field. And then when you really talk about, well, how do we get started? I think there's two different constituencies that I think about in the small and mid-market enterprise, and the smaller, entrepreneurial, startup where you're taking an idea and you're moving it forward. We've seen a lot of success using public cloud services. We've seen a lot of success because you're not going to burden your organization with some of those traditional roles and IT, a large IT team that has very structured approaches. We do see a bit of a challenge with some of the medium-sized organizations because you end up having a lot more rigor, and there is a bit of a drop-off there. So I think with organizations, it's really, how do we focus on our differentiating features? And so again, thinking digitally and thinking about focusing in on what value am I going to bring to my customers, and how do I spend most of my time doing that?
And as you mentioned, small businesses, not right now, as they've increasingly started using digital technologies in their operations, it is crucial to keep the data backed up and protected. That's another aspect of it, right? Now, KJ, how can businesses make sure their data is backed up and protected, and what's the best way to manage IT security for a small business?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and it's very timely. One of the events that I was fortunate enough to attend this year was a Collision conference in Toronto, and so if Canadian organizations had the opportunity, it really was a different type of conference in that it was entrepreneurial based. It's organizations that are going to see lots of growth, and so as I got to talking to customers that were there and people that were visiting the conference, I started asking people, what does your business do? What are you focused on? How do you, who are you trying, what problem are you trying to solve? And what was really interesting is some of the very, very unique use cases that are out there that these smaller businesses were really trying to, address valid problems and bring value to their customers. And what I started doing is asking about data resiliency. So you hit the nail on the head. And I would say that none of the organizations that I talked to had a really good answer for data resiliency. And so when you think about it, the intellectual property that you are creating, the data that you are going to store, the information that you're going to use to generate business insights is really critical to the identity of your company. And building resiliency around that is not just as simple as having a backup of that. One of the things that's come out of our security study that we do annually is, one of the primary ways that bad actors are taking advantage of, not just enterprise businesses, but small and medium-sized enterprises as well, is really via ransomware. And ransomware and protecting your data is less about having a version or a copy of that data, and it's more about having a disaster recovery plan. And so I guess it's important that, small and medium businesses really identify what is their critical data. Not just, some data is critical because if it gets exposed, then there's challenges and issues that come up. But there's also data that's critical because it's your intellectual property. It's how you are bringing a differentiated value to your customers. And then understand, how do we fence that data? How do we protect that data? How do we create layers of resiliency to protect that? And so, a lot of organizations are also struggling just not having the skills to really deal with that. And so it is a bit of a different set of skills. And that's where even large organizations in a lot of ways are looking for, managed services to take that on. And so again, where you can find services, whether they're SaaS services or managed services that are provided that allow you as an organization to really focus on what differentiates you and the value you're trying to bring to customers. You can have those services like data resiliency, disaster recovery taken care of, but it doesn't take your people's time away from focused on those core activities, right?
Right. Now, as the business grows, KJ, so does the complexity associated with its operations. What are the most important aspects of technology that you focus on when you're expanding your company? And, as your business grows, how do you ensure that all operations are running smoothly?
Yeah, that's good. So one of the things I talk to customers of all sizes about is really having good metrics in place. And the way that I try to break things apart is building resiliency, manageability, portability, observability, and security as sort of, they're related to each other, but building them as different maturity models that you're going to grow as the company grows. And you're right, as organizations get larger, as they start maybe dealing with credit card information or personal identifiable information for their customers, then some of the complexity grows, some of the compliancy requirements grow. So I think it's having a good handle on, what is the data that you have? How do you create security as part of your identity for your customers, and then also looking at how you can mature in those different areas. And small and medium businesses, I think, have an advantage in that they aren't necessarily in a lot of cases tied to some of these legacy systems. And so looking at some of these newer architectures, leveraging cloud native services, leveraging some of the tools that are really available, that's where they can establish secured environments or build that data resiliency or build observability into their users' applications, just as part of their growth process. So I think it's don't take for granted those things are going to happen by themselves. Understand the shared responsibility model when you're building with public cloud or SaaS services. And then, having a game plan as you move forward, that when you hit some of those milestones and you need added compliancy, knowing that there are organizations out there, like CDW that can help with those challenges and help you through those without needing to add, ISO certification experts, to your team necessarily.
Right. Now, I know it's been quite some time for the pandemic back in 2019, but the small business market has been somehow slow to adopt, cloud services, and this is hindering their growth. And to break through the adoption barriers that face them today, it is important for companies in every industry to partner with IT companies, for instance, CDW. KJ, share with the audience, how does CDW support its partners in making this transition to cloud, and what does CDW offer its partners when it comes to cloud adoption?
It's a good question. And I think that, at CDW, we try to break things down into a couple of different phases. And so, we break things down into assess, architect, implement, and operate. And so with that, a lot of times, the earlier that we can work with our customers, then the better off we can help them really understand, well, what are the different technology options that they have? Sometimes migrating workloads into the cloud is not the right thing. Sometimes there's a hybrid approach. Sometimes that should stay within your data center, or it should be in a hosted facility. And so, really assessing and building that plan is kind of step one with a lot of our customers. We also have a number of solutions architects nationally. So we've got 90 plus solutions architects all across, traditional data center, public cloud, security, risk advisory, assessments. And so being able to work with, architects in a pre-sales manner, build out what that plan needs to be. Then we have professional services to do implementation, make sure that things are implemented in a secure way and well-architected way, and then operate. And so where I think a lot of organizations struggle, not just in Canada, but globally, is there's a significant skills shortage. And so finding expertise around, specific security technologies, cloud technologies, automation orchestration technologies can be really challenging. And so that's where if you can find a good trusted advisor to work with you on those solutions, not only can they help you identify, the best solution for you as an organization, but they can also better learn your challenges uniquely. And then again, assess, architect, implement, and help operate those solutions, in a manner that best meets your needs.
Right. And the business who's just starting out to think about their IT strategies must use some advice from a professional like yourself, KJ. On a final note, what advice would you give to a business who is just starting to think, about their IT strategy?
I would say that it's important to understand that the on-premises data center or the co-location has certain attributes and certain values that can drive the best value for the customer. The same thing with the public cloud. Most organizations in Canada and globally are going to be in a hybrid situation. You're going to be leveraging, on-premises solutions. You're going to be leveraging solutions at the edge. You're going to make sure that you've got your home users productive. In addition to public cloud services, and many organizations are going to use multiple public cloud services. Really looking at what services are you focused on? How are you providing differentiating value for your customers? And then that's where you're going to want your IT team to spend the most amount of time. Where you have things like maybe it's mail services and just connecting people. Maybe it's document repositories. Where that's not really providing differentiating value, try and find a service that can supply that, whether that's things like, Google Docs or things like Microsoft 365. There's generally not a lot of value in operating a traditional mail service, inside of your environment. So find ways to out-task that, and not necessarily outsource, but find ways to take the non-differentiating tasks and find services to fill those gaps, and then focus your IT teams on where they can really provide value. One of the things I think is really important is your IT teams know your business better than anybody else does. And so the more time they spend focused on solving your problems, then the better value you're going to get from that team. So it's focusing on what's going to give you differentiation, and then finding service providers or finding SaaS services that can really fill in those commodity services for you.
No, great recommendations for sure that will help almost any small business owner who wants to transform digitally. And KJ, was so great to have you on the podcast today and hear about your insights into how small businesses use technology in innovative ways. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your listeners.
Thank you.
It's been amazing to have KJ on our podcast today, and I appreciate all the insights he shared with us about how small businesses can make the most of their digital transformation. We hope you enjoyed it, and once again, we would like to thank our exclusive banking partner, RBC, exclusive shipping partner, UPS, and our exclusive accounting software partner, Xero, for supporting this initiative. Please do share the podcast and feel free to check out the other episodes. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine to stay up to date on all our upcoming events and get the top business insights from industry leaders. This is Maheen, your host for the Small Business Podcast.